My dad locked my brother in the attic. I now know the horrifying things he was doing to him. All my life, my parents have always told me that I was an only child. My parents always acted a bit strange, but I loved them. They would have no reason to lie to me, so I believed them. That was until today when I discovered the horrifying secret they have been hiding from me. I have lived in this house since I was 2 years old, so the noises I've heard coming from the attic weren't strange to me. When I was little, my mom would tell me fairies were living there to watch over us. If I was really bad, they would come and take me, and I would have to live with them forever. I know she was trying to frighten me, but I don't think she actually realized how much it did scare me. I used to have a recurring nightmare of some unseen force taking me out of bed and putting me in a burlap sack. I could feel every bump as they dragged me up those attic stairs. It felt so real. I would soon find out the true horrifying meaning behind these dreams. I was too terrified to get out of bed at night, but every now and then I would hear footsteps and think they were coming for me and sprint as fast as I could to my parents' room. One of my earliest memories was me diving into their bed after hearing something moving around up there in the middle of the night. I would make my dad check every inch of that house, especially the attic door, before I'd go back to bed. I was always afraid he would forget to put the chains back on after feeding them. I used to hide under the covers with my mother's arms wrapped around me, and she would sing to me and I would usually be asleep by the time he returned. She had such a soothing voice. I always believed nothing could harm me as long as I was in her arms. She was so calm no matter what happened. I can't remember one time she raised her voice to me. My dad wasn't as calm as my mom, but he never shouted at me. He believed communication was the key to any good relationship. The town I live in is small with less than 1,000 people. Everyone knows each other and we all look out for each other. So it doesn't make sense how my parents managed to hide a child in the attic all these years without someone finding out. Our next door neighbor, Mrs. Henson, went on a date with a guy she met on Facebook a few years back while her husband was at a bar. The whole town knew about it before she even got out of the restaurant, even though it happened 2 towns over. That's the thing about small towns, everyone knows your business. So how did my parents get away with it for so long? Looking back, I probably should have known something was wrong. The constant scratching, the crying, the chain door. Then there was the feeding bucket. I guess when you are a kid, you will believe anything your parents tell you. By the time I stopped believing in fairies, my parents had me convinced that raccoons were living up there, and my dad was treating them for rabies. I don't know how I believed them. It sounds so stupid now, but it worked. I never went near the attic. Elle first started to get suspicious about a year ago. It was my dad's birthday, and he had a bit too much to drink and forgot to lock the attic door. I only noticed when I got up to go to the toilet. I tried to warn him, but he was out cold on the couch. I didn't want to wake my mom, so I went back to bed. A while later, I was awoken by a weird noise, but I thought it came from the attic, so I didn't think anything of it and tried to go back to sleep. Before I got a chance to close my eyes, I heard a thud. It sounded like it came from the end of my bed, so I got a fright and jumped up. Staring into the darkness, I could just about make out a shadowy figure rocking over and back in the corner. The noise was coming from them banging their head on the wall as they swayed back and forth repeatedly. First, I thought it was my dad, so I whispered, "Dad, is that you?" But he didn't answer. Suddenly, the thuds started to become louder and closer together. That's when I realized it wasn't my dad. I could feel the blood rushing to my head and my heart started jumping to the beat. Thud, 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 thud of his head hitting the wall. I wanted to shout out for help, but I was breathing so heavily I thought I was going to faint. Then it just stopped, and the only sound I could hear, apart from my racing heart, was the intense, shallow breathing coming from whoever was standing at the end of my bed. As I watched him slowly turn toward me, there was a moment where I thought I was going to die. I couldn't feel my heart anymore, and I'm fairly sure my life flashed before my eyes. I then heard him shout, "Josh!" before laughing maniacally. I will tell you this, I screamed louder than I ever screamed in my life. I wouldn't be surprised if I woke the whole town. I don't remember much after that. I may have passed out. I don't know how my parents kept doing this, but they were able to convince me it was all a dream, and I believed them even when I found a head-shaped dent on my wall the next day. I guess they were my parents, and I never expected them to lie to me. But the veil had been lifted, and I started to notice every little noise that came from the attic, and it scared the hell out of me. The next few months were normal, until my dad had a few too many again, and ended up falling asleep on the couch. I don't know how long after it was, but something woke me. I heard, "Josh, Josh, please wake up." I was after coming out of a deep sleep and could barely keep my eyes open, so I thought I was dreaming and pulled the covers over my head. I then felt a hand on my shoulder. "Josh, please, we are running out of time." When I turned around, I saw that shadowy figure standing over me again. I freaked out and screamed uncontrollably. Moments later, my dad rushed into my room and turned on the light. That's when I saw its face, and it terrified me. My dad put a sack over his head and had him dragged out of there in seconds. The only thing he said to me was, "Did he touch you?" But I was in shock and couldn't answer, so he locked me in my room. It was the next morning before he came back. By then, I started to come around and wanted answers. He didn't walk in right away like he usually would. Instead, he knocked. "Josh," my dad said, "I need you to answer this question truthfully. Can you do that?" "Dad, why am I locked in here? What's happening?" I replied nervously. "Josh," he shouted. That was the first time I ever heard him talk like that to me, so I got frightened and started to cry. "Josh, just listen," he said, this time in a calmer tone. "Everything will be okay, son. Just answer the question, please." I blurted out. "No, Daddy didn't touch me. Why, did I do something wrong?" "No, son, you did good," he replied as he let out a sigh of relief. Then he walked away, and I heard nothing from him for hours. When he came back, Mom was with him. She had a burger and fries, which she left down on the bed beside me. I knew things were bad when she couldn't even look me in the eye. When I asked them what was wrong, they seemed to struggle to get the words out. They were usually very vocal, so it was weird to see them like that. When they eventually started explaining what was going on, it shocked me to my core. They told me I had a brother that they kept locked in the attic all these years. I didn't know what to say, but it did explain what I saw that night and why that shadowy figure looked so much like me. They said he was born with a dangerous condition and they had to lock him in the attic to keep everyone safe, but they assured me it was okay as long as I didn't have any contact with him. When I asked them why they didn't just take him to the hospital to get help, they told me it wasn't that kind of sickness. I was worried about him, and I wanted to do something about it. I decided that the best way to help both my brother and myself was to find out more about his condition. I spent weeks secretly searching online and throughout my parents' room, but found nothing that could explain such bizarre behavior in my family's history. I felt trapped, torn between wanting to free my brother and the fear that his release might endanger us all. One night, as I lay in bed pondering my next move, I heard a familiar scratching at the attic door, but it was different this time, more intense, desperate. I knew I had to do something. Equipped with a flashlight, I slowly approached the attic door and unlocked the chain. I took a deep breath and ascended the creaky stairs. When the attic came into view, my flashlight revealed a scene that chilled me to my core. There in the center of the room, surrounded by chains and old toys, was not just one but two identical figures, both resembling me, staring at me with hollow eyes. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. "You finally came," one of them whispered. "We've been waiting for you." "We've missed you, Josh," the other one said. My knees buckled and I felt a sinking feeling in my stomach. The truth was more horrifying than I had imagined. I wasn't an only child. The tales my parents told me, the dreams of being dragged into a burlap sack, and the figure I saw were all real, but they weren't of my brother. They were memories, fragments of my own past that I had suppressed. I was one of the children in the attic. My parents had somehow managed to integrate one version of me into the normal world while keeping the other two versions locked away. The door behind me slammed shut. I turned my flashlight towards it and caught a glimpse of my parents' sorrowful faces before everything went dark. The attic would be my home once again.